If you've ever seen a Hollywood movie about World War II code breaking, you probably know how the story goes. A daring boarding party leaps onto a sinking submarine, grabs a strange metallic device that looks like a heavy typewriter, and carries it off into the night. The Allies plug in the machine, press a few keys, and suddenly every secret German signal is laid bare. It makes for great cinema. Hollywood gets one part right, the machine mattered, but having the physical machine was not enough on its own. Capturing an Enigma machine was certainly helpful, but by itself, a machine was just a box of gears, lamp bulbs, and rotatable wheels. Having the physical device didn't tell you how it was configured on any given morning. Once midnight hit and the operator changed the daily settings, a captured machine was severely limited. You could type all day and get nothing but random characters. The breakthrough that actually helped save merchant sailors in the North Atlantic didn't come from grabbing a machine alone. It came from grabbing a set of short signal and weather codebooks recovered from a flooded submarine in the middle of the night by three men who understood that the documents mattered. To understand why that booklet mattered so much, you have to look at what happened to the Allied navies in the winter of 1942. For months, British codebreakers at Bletchley Park had been reading German naval communications with reasonable consistency. They did this using mechanical deciphering engines called bombies, which tested thousands of key combinations until they narrowed the search to a small number of settings worth checking. Then on February 1, 1942, the German Navy dropped a curtain across the Atlantic. To secure their U-boat communications, German engineers introduced a brand new version of the Enigma machine, known as the M4. Where older machines used 3 interchangeable rotors to scramble letters, the M4 added a 4th rotor into the mix. Mathematically, that single extra wheel exploded the number of possible starting positions by a factor of 26, creating far more configurations to test. Bletchley Park didn't have enough mechanical bombas to brute force those extra combinations. Overnight, the codebreakers became largely blind to the main U-boat operational traffic, a cipher key they nicknamed Shark. The consequences were severe. Without intelligence on where U-boat wolfpacks were waiting, Allied convoys repeatedly sailed straight into ambushes. In 1942 alone, German submarines sank millions of tons of Allied shipping. Supply lines were under immense pressure, food and fuel were running low in Britain, and for 10 painful months, Bletchley Park struggled to break operational messages sent to the Atlantic U-boat fleet. Inside Hut 8, the section at Bletchley Park responsible for naval codes, Hugh Alexander and the code-breaking team were working long shifts trying to find a way back in, building on foundations laid by Alan Turing. They already understood how the new 4-rotor machine was wired. They didn't need to steal another typewriter. What they needed was what cryptanalysts call a crib bob. A crib is a guess at the plain text hiding beneath the code. If you can deduce that a specific encrypted message contains standard phrasing, you can plug those known letter pairs into a Bombay. The machine can then eliminate millions of incorrect wheel settings and isolate the candidate configurations that produced that exact scramble. Without a crib, the math was nearly impossible. With a strong weather crib, Bletchley could target specific messages sent in compatible modes and resolve the settings in a matter of hours. The problem was that German naval operators were strictly trained to avoid predictable phrasing. They used special lookup books that converted routine military phrases into compact code groups before typing them into the Enigma machine. To get a crib, Bletchley Park needed those lookup books, and one of the best opportunities was to seize current books from an active U-boat before its crew could throw them overboard in weighted bags. That opportunity finally came on the night of October 30th, 1942, but not in the icy Atlantic. It happened in the warm waters of the eastern Mediterranean, off the coast of Port Said, Egypt. A British reconnaissance plane spotted a German submarine, U-559, running on the surface. Within hours, 5 British destroyers, including HMS Petard, closed in to hunt it down. What followed was a prolonged, grueling hunt that lasted late into the night. The destroyers took turns dropping depth charges, systematically tracking the submarine with sonar while U-559 crept through the dark water below, taking hit after hit until she was too badly damaged to remain submerged. Late that evening, her commander blew his ballast tanks and brought U-559 to the surface. As U-559 broke the water, HMS Petard swung around, sweeping the submarine's conning tower with searchlights and opening fire with deck guns. The German crew abandoned ship into the dark water, expecting their vessel to sink quickly. On the deck of HMS Petard, a 29-year-old officer named Lieutenant Anthony Fasson saw that U-559 was still riding the swells, floating just long enough to board. Fasson took charge of the boarding attempt, stripped off his clothes, and swam toward the submarine with 22-year-old able seaman Colin Grazier. They were followed by a teenage NAFI canteen assistant named Tommy Brown, who was working aboard Petard and had volunteered for the boat crew. Fasson and Grazier climbed up the conning tower ladder and dropped into the lower interior of U-559, where water was rising in the compartments. Working quickly, Fasson located key documents printed on thick paper using water-soluble red ink. The Germans printed sensitive codebooks in water-soluble ink so that if seawater touched them, the letters would quickly dissolve into an unreadable smear. Working against time, Fasson gathered booklets and passed them up the ladder to Tommy Brown, who stood near the hatch, handing them down to a waiting ship's boat. Brown made multiple trips up and down the ladder, carrying bundles of secret documents up into the night air. Fasson and Grazier remained inside the dark hull, gathering as many papers as they could carry. Suddenly, U-559 shuddered and plunged into the sea. Tommy Brown jumped clear of the conning tower just in time, but Anthony Fasson and Colin Grazier were trapped inside and carried down with the vessel. Tommy Brown survived, and the documents recovered from U-559 were carried back to HMS Petard. Among those documents were two crucial volumes: the Kurt Signal Heft, a short signal codebook for tactical messages, and the Wetterkurzschlüssel, the short weather codebook. When these documents reached Bletchley Park on November 24th, the analysts in Hut 8 realized they held the key to breaking the four-rotor M4 Enigma. It turned out the Kriegsmarine had built a subtle procedural flaw into their system. U-boats were required to send regular weather reports from their patrol squares. But the weather network still had to remain compatible with three-rotor Enigma systems used across other naval branches and shore stations. To maintain compatibility, U-boat radio operators set their fourth rotor to a neutral position, labeled A. With the fourth rotor set to A, the M4 could electrically imitate a three-rotor Enigma. With the captured Wetterkurzschlüssel in hand, Bletchley's weather specialists could compare German weather broadcasts with the captured codebook and build strong candidates for the original plaintext the German operator had typed. Because the message was sent in three-rotor mode, Bletchley's existing mechanical bombas could process it. The weather reports provided the missing cribs. On December 13, 1942, 19 days after the captured books arrived at Bletchley Park, codebreakers using weather cribs derived from the recovered documents successfully recovered the daily keys. Hut 8 could read the four-rotor Shark cipher once again. Bletchley analysts passed the recovered keys directly to the Admiralty's Operational Intelligence Center in London, where Commander Roger Wynne monitored a map tracking known merchant convoys and suspected U-boat positions. Decrypted German messages began flowing to London once again. Intelligence officers could read patrol sectors and operational traffic for active U-boats. Admiralty officers immediately began sending coded radio messages to merchant convoys, ordering them to execute course corrections away from U-boat patrol areas. In January and February of 1943, Allied merchant shipping losses in the Atlantic dropped by roughly 50%. Ultra was not the sole reason the battle turned. Escort carriers, long-range aircraft, centimetric radar, and improved escort tactics were also vital, but breaking Shark restored a major advantage the Allies had been missing. Teenage canteen assistant Tommy Brown survived the boarding of U-559 and was awarded the George Medal for his courage. Anthony Fasson and Colin Grazier were posthumously awarded the George Cross, Britain's highest award for bravery not in the direct presence of the enemy. Movies and popular histories still focus on the mechanical typewriter, the metallic box with its clicking keys and light-up letters. It's an easy image to picture, and it fits neatly onto a movie screen. But the analyst who worked in Hut 8 knew the truth. Hardware alone was not enough. In this story, the machine was only half the equation. Capturing a machine was useful, but the weather codebook was what provided Bletchley Park with the crib material it needed to attack Shark again.